I feel guilty for not driving because I want to drive, right? And I know one day I will be there. I will be there by God's grace. I'm going to start driving again. And just like I'm able to get in the car now, it was all because of God. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy. But
so the real question is there really light at the end of the tunnel? Will we get to see that?
absolutely. I think there's always light at the end of the tunnel.
I'm gonna have to disagree because respectfully, I think we can respectfully agree to disagree, right? My back is itchy. I disagree because yes and no. I used to say there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's okay to not be okay.
Right.
But you're only gonna find that light if you get yourself out of the.
Really?
Are you gonna find it in the middle of the tunnel?
Okay, I see what you mean.
So that's just my perspective. So I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to get there.
You have to get up and walk to the light.
Of course, the light can come to you eventually, right. But there's more exposure if you're closer to it.
Absolutely, yeah. What if you're just tired and just need to take a little break?
That's
you're
okay.
Just so tired.
And that's completely fine. You have to find rest in that tunnel. Do you think you have set up a tent in your own grief?
You see, I really dislike when maybe people on the outside view it as you're staying in it too long and you're setting up a tent, when I think in reality you are processing grief. I don't know. I think at times that I do think, like, sometimes I just feel over it in general. I'm tired of going through grief. I'm tired of feeling sad. I'm tired of feeling anxious. And then I think to myself, am I really just choosing to stay in the pain? But then I'm torn with, the reality is I do have to allow myself to process the grief.
I would say I can respect the fact that you give yourself real boundaries and that you're actually, even though it's hard because a lot of people don't understand it, but you're all, like, around your family, it's still like you're being realistic with yourself. You're not creating this fake I'm strong,
yeah,
I'm this, I'm that. You're saying this is where I'm at.
I mean, I think that it's something I have barely been learning to really create boundaries and grief, because I think in my childhood I just realized so much stuff. Like now at this age, I don't know. Growing up, I think I would people please a lot as a kid. Still really trying to break that habit.
Including myself.
Yeah. But growing up, I just really learned that I had to be strong. And I'm kind of like the middle child. I have 2 older siblings and a younger brother. So I'm like kind of that awkward in between. So I feel like a lot fell on me as a child that I wasn't supposed to carry, you know?
So then how do you think you process grief? What are things that you do to create those realistic boundaries?
Well, initially I didn't. I think I put up kind of...
Like, do you have it figured out now?
No, absolutely not. And we are...
That's good to talk about.
Approaching the 3-year mark. And looking back, when we first entered this grief journey, I was like, okay, I think in a year I'll be okay. Definitely in the 2nd year, I'm going to be feeling way much better, right? And then the 3rd year in, I'm like, it just feels a little heavier. I think it's because we've almost had to remember Abel as much as we've known him, because he was here for 3 years. And this is the 3rd year that he's gone, you know? So it just feels a little heavier. But I think initially when we started the grief journey, I had to put up a kind of like a facade of, I'm okay, I'm strong. I found myself comforting others to make people feel better, like, hey, it's okay, Like everything will be
That's
fine.
the kind of person you originally are. You like to comfort others
Yes.
over yourself. You'll think about others more than you think about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we say it always goes back to grief, but it really always goes back to God. Truthfully,
Yes.
if we don't have a firm foundation or a real connection with Him, would you say where you're at today has a lot to do with where our relationship or your relationship with God is? I'll touch upon it in a bit, but do you think that it is grief?
Yes.
But how do you find
For
God
sure.
in the middle of your grief when you can't? You just feel so defeated.
For sure. That's a great question. I think everything ties back to God. I think some of the anxiety and depression that you possibly experience in grief ties back to a lack in a firm relationship with God. Don't get me wrong, there is like chemical imbalances that people go through and traumatic things that can interfere with you experiencing anxiety and depression. I'm not going to take that away. But for me, I think personally the thing that has been missing is a consistent relationship with God. I remember when we were still in the hospital, I asked this one mom that I know personally, she lost her son years ago in a tragic accident. He was 17.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her, I'm like, how do you do this? Like, it's just really hard. Like, how did you get through it? And she said, fervently praying. And at the moment, I just thought it was such a cliche answer. You know, I was like, man, that's so easy to say. Okay, keep praying, right? But as I walked these 3 years of grief, it was true. It's true all along.
And in this specific episode, we really want to be careful in how we say things and what we say, and especially when we talk about God, because, yeah, realistically, the season we're in is kind of transition because we're back in church, we're reading, we're praying more, or just finding more of that time, but it's still not there fully. Like, we're still learning
so
a
much
lot.
still, yeah. And like you said, I want to like team tag on that. Like, we don't want to take away from mental health struggles because they are very real, and I've first-handly like have experienced that. I know you have too, dealt with, you know, your struggles mentally.
So what would you say can help keep that consistency going in reading the Bible, or just simply staying connected in the midst of your grief?
Being completely honest, and I feel like ashamed of this, I haven't read my Bible in a really long time.
How long ago?
I mean, I think it's been a year that I opened my Bible, and it derives from being hurt. Like, I still, to some degree, feel hurt with God.
No, I mean, that's real.
I do, and I just feel like I was let down, and I know at the end of the day, God doesn't owe me anything, but it's just still the letdown of, I hoped for and I prayed for my son to be healed. I prayed for even a miracle the day of his passing. I said, I know you could do it, God. I know if I ask for it, you will give it to me. And it was given to me, just not in the way that I wanted, you know? I wanted my son healed, and he is healed, you know?
Still struggle with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's being real.
And so I think like the lack of prayer and the lack of reading his word daily initially derives from the hurt I still feel in my heart. I think I definitely set up a tent of hurt, a tent of anxiety, a tent of like depression and grief, a tent of grief, you know? It all fell under there. And I mean, I think that's a normal process of grief. Maybe not everyone goes through it because literally everyone's grief journey is so different. They're not all the same.
I mean, look at us.
We grieve so differently.
Mm-hmm.
We really do. We had the same loss. We lost our son, but you grieve in a different way than I do. You're kind of more go.
I overwork myself.
Yes, to more like distraction. I cannot stay still. I'm going to keep going. And I'm more so, I guess, stuck in the staying still. I would say. It
is easy to look at it on the outside and say, but Britt, like, you just need to get out of it. You can always have more children. Like, you're okay. Everything, life is beautiful. It's easy to look at it that way, but how do you get out of the tent though? The mentality of that, or
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Right now, we're really focused in trying to better ourselves and trying to take care of our marriage, because with grief, marriage, it just takes a toll.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many. I wouldn't say so many. There's been a few moments where we're just like, man, are we really gonna make it? Are Alfredo and Britt gonna be endgame? And the thing that draws us back is God together. And if that foundation is not sturdy, then it's not going to be good.
Right. One of my many fears in grief is losing my marriage. Like, it's very common to divorce, especially after a loss, because if I'm honest, I tend to blame myself a lot for some of the things that Brithzy goes through, and we can talk about that now. But like the whole car situation, sometimes I get in such a negative thought, and I try to connect that with what did I do wrong, or what is it that I could do better, and talk about the car anxiety though.
Yeah, I think the car anxiety started 3 years ago almost now, when I just stopped driving because...
You haven't driven in 3 years.
Right, I have not driven in almost 3 years because I experienced a panic attack, and it just freaked me out. I think that was the first time I ever experienced one, and I stopped driving after that. And now it got a little worse in the winter to where I didn't want to be in the car at all, because I just felt so much anxiety being in the car, and I tried to figure out why. And that's the thing about anxiety. You try to find the answer as to why it's happening. And it drives you.
You're constantly anticipating.
And you're constantly anticipating that you're going to feel anxiety more. And the next time you feel anxiety, you try to avoid it. And so it's like a whole loop. I try to figure out why, but I think it all just ties back to grief. And a lot of tense moments happen in the car with Abel. A lot of like, okay, we need to speed to Choa. Like, Abel's not doing well. There was a lot of times that we had to pull over on the freeway.
On the side of the road, yep.
To wait for an ambulance to pick me and Abel up, and while you would drive alone to the hospital.
There's so much context to it that's why you can't just look at it from the outside and say, like, what do you mean you have car anxiety? Like, just get in the car and drive.
Yeah.
And people that look at it that way or think about it, it's not.
No, it's really unfair, because even I find myself kind of shaming myself.
You already do.
I do, because
like
I feel guilty for not driving, because I want to drive, right? And I know one day I will be there. I will be there by God's grace. I'm going to start driving again. And just like I'm able to get in the car now, it was all because of God. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy, but it's getting there,
But we don't celebrate enough the milestones, and I'm guilty of that myself. Like, for example, we just now have been consistently driving to church
every Sunday.
Every Sunday, Jesus. For the past month and a half.
Yeah, almost 2 months.
2 months almost, consistently, and that's a miracle alone to celebrate. And we just we live in a time now that we don't celebrate stuff like that no more, and say, wow, like, all this time, like, I've been going through this, and I still, it's easier to get caught up in the fact that I don't drive. I can't.
Get yourself in a pity party, right? Yeah, and I think we're speaking of tents. I definitely set up a tent in the winter, of like a completely different tent of anxiety.
And I think a lot of people do, but I learned something. you have to prepare yourself
Mm-hmm.
to it, because you're going into war with your own thoughts, your own mind. So when you get into the winter, why do we walk in so vulnerable with already accepting that we don't like this
The winter.
season?
You kind of go into it with a negative headspace already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of...
It's almost became a trend to be in a... Like, anxiety is almost...
They've made it kind of a cute thing.
Yeah. Like, at least I hear this a lot in high school and stuff. A lot of kids and say, oh, I have anxiety. I have ADHD. I have this. It's like anybody... We're all trying to claim that we have something.
Okay.
And I mean, I do agree. I go to get checked and stuff like that. But I think sometimes, especially now, we just accept that this is what we are. This is what we have. And I think one thing that you do that's so gracefully beautiful, la mosca, gracefully beautiful, is that you give yourself that space.
Absolutely, you have to, because who else is going to give you the space?
But you also say, but I'm not going to stay there.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I said in the winter a lot. It's only a season. It's not forever.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people around me just thought it was going to be a forever thing.
Going back to building a tent in grief, or in your grief, I don't know if did we officially answer the question, how do we... I know we're still trying to figure it out, but what have we learned? Like, what have we learned about the moments we have stayed, or the moments we've decided to get out? I'm even tired of saying I'm tired.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just think we're, like, as a society, we're hard on ourselves, and we're hard on people who are going through grief. I don't think we give them... we kind of like rush them, like, okay, it's been a few months, like, get over it. It's been a year, get over it. Like, you need to not be so sad all the time. They're in a better place. Like, it's about time you start living your life now. It's been years. Come on, you're at the 5-year mark, 10-year mark. And it's like a person never forgets, you know? They will always forever be grieving. Yes, I think if you are in a tent right now, it's okay. And give yourself grace. It's not forever, it's for a season. Don't shame yourself, because that's something that I did a lot. And I would kind of negative talk myself, like, I'm wasting my life. I'm literally wasting my years. And it's not that. I think it's like a natural process of grief, and it's not forever. You won't be in that tent forever.